They say time will tell. Oh, how right they are. Time has a few choice moments, open to opportunity and to despair. The hands of time push us forward. We work in its ways.
Everybody wants to shout now. Well done, Bobby Charlton. Well done, Manchester United.
Time can be a great engraver, should we use it to lead by example. They say time will tell. Oh, how right they are.
The time has sadly come for us to say farewell to arguably the greatest ever footballer this club has ever seen. Today marks the funeral of the great Sir Bobby Charlton, and we will bring you live pictures from Old Trafford as the funeral cars make their way up St Matt Busby Way. Then they make their way to Manchester Cathedral, where the funeral will take place. We're sat here with the Sir Bobby Charlton stand behind us, of course, a stand which in 2016 was unveiled in his name. With me here is our former academy player Danny Webber and John Massey, who has been a Manchester United fan since the days when Sir Bobby Charlton was playing on that hallowed turf. John, it's a very emotional day for everybody connected to this club, and for you who saw Sir Bobby play. Why is Sir Bobby regarded as the best player this club has ever seen?
Well, thank you. Firstly, because he was with the club for so long, not only as a player, but as an official and a director, ambassador, and so on. And of course, after Munich, when he survived it, much to his surprise and indeed disappointment in a sense, because he couldn't believe that he was still alive and all his mates were not. But once he recovered and was able to play football again, he was the catalyst that drove this club recovery period, undoubtedly. And I remember watching him, and I was here when he made his debut before the Munich disaster. But after that, when we remarkably got to the cup final in 1958, it was Bobby Charlton that drove us on in that particular period and subsequent to that.
He is one of only 9 players to have won the World Cup, the European Footballer of the Year, and Division 1 title. He is such a remarkable in the European Cup. He is such a remarkable figure, isn't he? What was it about his playing style, his game, which lit up this place?
Well, he could just glide past people as if they weren't there, and obviously shoot with either foot. He scored his first goal, I think, with his left foot. But of course, he could play and shoot very, very hard, with great venom, with both feet. And of course, he played wide left a lot of the time, and he just used to glide past people and then either bring other people into the game or dip his shoulder and go himself and score with a fantastic shot. So, I mean, he would just appeal to people. Obviously appealed to people at the time that he came through, and appealed to people over the years because of the goals he scored.
Yeah, 249 of them for Manchester United. Danny, you and I grew up watching videos of Sir Bobby playing, but then you were fortunate to meet him as you came through the famed Manchester United Academy, treading the path that Sir Bobby once did, of course. What did he mean to you, and how influential was he around the club when you were coming through the system?
Well, I think first and foremost he was massive, and he always has been. From me knowing Manchester United as a young player pre-academy, then coming into the academy, you always understood, you know, who Bobby Charlton was, what he'd achieved on the pitch. But what it did when I met him was, you know, immediately you're in awe of somebody that you'd heard so many stories about, and he didn't disappoint, you know, with his sort of communication to you, speaking about Manchester United, how much it meant to be a Manchester United player, to wear the shirt with such pride. And I always think of him and his standards, first and foremost, as a person. before his, and then obviously what he took onto the football pitch and the pride he had in wearing a Man United shirt, and obviously being a director and an ambassador at this great football club.
We just saw some pictures of some of the academy players and staff going to the cathedral, of course. They still live by the standards that Sir Bobby and his peers set way back when the birth of the Busby Babes, John. Now, you would have been in awe of the Babes and the talent that team brought through into the Manchester United first team. It's wonderful to know that his legacy continues throughout the Manchester United Academy.
Very much so, and I hope those young boys that we've just seen make it to the great stage that Bobby Charlton did. And I think, as Danny said, he was such an influence over a period of time at the club. He was a great influence, I believe, to Sir Matt when he first, sorry, not Sir Matt, Sir Matt as well, but Sir Alex, when Sir Alex first came as Alex Ferguson. It was Bobby Charlton that was by his side throughout, both the good and consoling during the bad. But I think Sir Alex would say that Bobby was a tremendous influence on him throughout his career as a manager here.
Yeah, absolutely right, John. Now, we all know the story of Sir Bobby Charlton and what he achieved as a player and then as a club ambassador and director. Let's remind ourselves, though, of the wonderful career he had from beginning to finish. Yeah, the incomparable Sir Bobby Charlton. And as you can see from these live pictures, the fans are turning out to be part of this celebration of his life. Yes, it is a very sad, a very emotional occasion, but we must remember as well that he achieved so much for this football club. We should celebrate his achievements as well as feel sad and emotional that we say farewell to Sir Bobby. Obviously a hugely emotional time for his family.
Yes,
John
so.
and
Yes.
Lady Norma and all of the Charltons. We just wish them all the best. So they will be extremely sad today, but also remembering what he did for the football club, for his family, for England as well.
Yes, indeed. Obviously, it's a day for reflection, and they'll be doing that. But after today, they can reflect on a man who's achieved greatness in everything he did, and that must give them some pride, I am sure, albeit at a sad time.
The academy players and staff giving a guard of honour. The hearse will shortly be passing through Old Trafford and up Sir Matt Busby Way, and as we said, then down across over to Manchester City Centre, where it will stop at the cathedral before the funeral takes place. Great to see the fans turning out,
Yes,
Danny and John, isn't it? Great to see, and you're right, it's no surprise, John, but Danny, you know, there's going to be lots of people wishing to pay their respects today.
Without a shadow of a doubt, and we're talking, you know, different generations of people whose lives he's touched, or whose, you know, grandfathers, fathers have told stories, and, you know, in households of what Sir Bobby was like, and how much he's been loved by everybody that he's come into contact with, and the whole club has come together, quite rightly so. Alongside the statue, you've got as you say, you've got the young academy players there, and obviously a lot of these boys wouldn't have had a lot of interaction with Sir Bobby.
Yeah.
I'm sure that, you know, they're aware the magnitude of this football club and what a huge part he played of the standards and roles that they now have to take forward.
Do you remember when we went to Sheffield, Danny, and we heard the news on the way, actually, and it was desperately sad, but then at the ground we spoke to some of the fans.
Yeah.
And what was amazing that day is the fans we spoke to of all ages all knew the story. The young boys and girls have been passed down the stories of Sir Bobby by their fathers or mothers and grandfathers and grandmothers. You know, he's a player, a person who transcended those generations.
Without a shadow of a doubt. And it's just the name Bobby Charlton. It's in everybody's household, and, you know, for those reasons. And it's not just because of Manchester United, because of his performances for England, the way he conducted himself. Him as a person, without a shadow of a doubt, John. You're right. Is there anything that stands out for you, John, in terms of him as a person?
Well, his association with United and England, and then of course his association with landmines, and trying to, he formed a charity for that, didn't he?
Yes,
You know, to bring to attention that the devastation that landmines can play in people's lives, and I think he made a difference there as well. So, you know, wherever he trod, he made a difference, and a positive difference in all aspects.
Yeah, he played a huge role in helping organisations like UNICEF spread their magnificent charity work. You would have had plenty of dealings with him coming through the system, Danny, and not just about football would he talk to you, but about life and about being a good person, being a good human being, as well as a footballer.
That's right, and it's the standards that were echoed then by, you know, in my journey, by Sir Alex, and even Nobby Stiles. When I first walked through the door, the message was always consistent about being a good person, about working hard, having a good work ethic, about, you know, working class family values, humility. And, you know, for me, even at the back end of when I'd finished playing, and I played in a Legends match here against Barcelona, he came in the dressing room with Sir Alex, and in the same way, it was amazing. You know,
Wonderful.
It made you feel like you were 13 years old again until you run out on the pitch and you realise you're not. But no, it shows the level of consistency, and even though it was a Legends match that wasn't high, you know, isn't necessarily meant to be highly competitive, the words were go out and win. You know?
Yeah.
So,
He is
And don't come
was
back
a
in here until you've done.
until you have done.
he's a
yeah,
born
precisely.
winner, that is for sure. We mentioned, of course, his achievements and winning the Ballon d'Or in 1966. He was also, wasn't he, runners-up in 67 and 68.
Yep.
Sir Bobby Charlton, such a magnificent player. And you watched that team, which is still, I think, the only team which had 3 Ballon d'Or winners in the same team,
I think it
Besselaw
would
and
be.
Charlton.
Yeah, Besselaw and Charlton, yes.
That must have been some fun to watch that team.
Absolutely. Very much hit both here and in the away matches. I remember particularly one down at Southampton, and we were playing in yellow and blue shorts as the away strip in those days. And I can't remember who centred it particularly, but Dennis Law rose like a salmon, as he usually did, headed the ball down. George Best just dummied it and let it go, and Charlton just blasted it to the edge of the penalty area. United 1-0 up. You know, wonderful, absolutely wonderful.
Do you have a favourite goal that he scored, John?
Favourite goal? That's a good question. I suppose not 2 favourite goals from when we won the European Cup in '68. Unusually for Bobby Charlton, a header, and then of course sealing the deal for 4-1. Those particularly stand out because of what we achieved in
significance of
that
it.
game.
Yeah.
But there were many others here that you can remember and think, wow.
I love watching those goals back. You know that the second one that John speaks about in particular. Danny, you'll be able to tell us how hard it was, because he was across the front post, wasn't he? And the ball was squared across, and somehow with his right foot he scores into the far side of the goal. It's a ridiculous finish.
Yeah, I mean, I genuinely used to watch it as on a video as a kid, not just for that goal, but it was a George Best video I used to watch, and it used to have obviously the cup final goals.
Yeah.
And every time, even as a kid, I used to think, how's he done that?
How has he scored that?
And you're out there, you can practice, you can go out, but that finish was unbelievable. So, yeah, man of many talents.
I mean, he, like we said, scored 249 goals for United, home, away, in Europe, domestically. And he was doing it, John, on pitches which aren't like the carpets they play on today.
Definitely not.
And, by the way, when you could put a tackle in or two on those star players, you imagine how good Sir Bobby would be in today's game.
But on today's pitches, absolutely beautiful. And he'd hit the ball so bad, I'd probably score from the halfway line. But yes, I remember one here as well. I think it was still called the Charity Shield then, when he scored the goal, but it came very quickly upfield to Brian Kidd, then Dennis Law. Dennis Law laid it off, and Charlton just smashed it in the back of the net. And well, I'm sure he did score tap-ins occasionally, but you associate him really with that shot and hitting it from, significant distance with a ball which is a far heavier than the balls that we play with now.
Absolutely. I can't remember many tap-ins. They always seem to be worldies, the goals that Sir Bobby scored. So the hearse is on its way, with the funeral director walking in front. The car will make its way down to Mount Busby Way and then over to Manchester Cathedral, where we have cameras as well, and are hoping to speak to 2 or 3 of the people who are part of the service today. But this is the chance now, Danny, for those fans to say their farewell. You can see many of them applauding as the cars drive by.
Just the turnout alone shows the magnitude of the man.
Yeah, absolutely.
And as you say, everybody come out of their houses today. It's not exactly a warm day, but that's not even coming to people's thoughts. They're here to show the respect, as you say, Sully, and quite rightly so. I hope Lady Norma in the car is absorbing and feeling the warmth from the fans that are there to support her as well.
I don't know if you can hear the police sirens behind us, but Greater Manchester Police will be escorting the procession to the cathedral, of course. But this, John, is a moment when all these fans will be saying their final farewells, perhaps recalling some of their fondest memories, just as you have been with us today.
Absolutely. And you mentioned the youngsters, the young academy players who are by the Trinity statue. They'll realise how big a club they're talking and being part of when they see the reaction of fans to what is going on in front of them.
Yeah, that's a good point, actually. Maybe some of them haven't been as aware. Sir Bobby hasn't been around as much as in the last few years as he was probably when you're coming through, Danny, but they will certainly know of his story, of his legacy. But this probably just rubber stamps it, doesn't it, John? They're seeing the turnout now for him.
Yeah. And the reception he's getting, the final journey he's getting from the fans is again equally significant, isn't it? I mean, look at the crowds and all the way down to Mount Busby Way and to the ground.
Following in behind.
Yeah.
There's the academy players.
Yeah.
Also academy director there, Nick Cox. Travis
I
Binion of
him,
the under-21s and 18s players there.
I presume the car will stop by the Trinity Stat. There we are.
These live pictures from just outside Old Trafford on the concourse. There's the Trinity. We're here at the Theatre of Dreams, a phrase coined by Sir Bobby, of course.
Yep.
Great work by our camera team to bring you these live pictures. The hearse going past the Trinity statue, you saw the Trinity Club just behind there.
You can see people who come out of work just to, to share this moment. Kids on parents' shoulders.
Yeah, they'll remember this, and maybe if these kids don't know the full story, they can now go home and research it and
Yes, true.
go and watch some of his wonderful moments, his wonderful goals.
Well, must for you to say, all the people in the Trafford Park, they come out of their work, hard work, and want to be entertained.
Yes.
And you players should do that, and of course they did.
That was very much the Matt's mantra, wasn't it? These
Yeah,
men and women have been working hard all
That's right.
week.
yeah,
They pay their money to come and watch you,
yes,
go out and entertain them.
and entertain as they did.
So once the procession departs Old Trafford, it will make its way to the city centre and to Manchester Cathedral for the funeral. That due to take place a little bit after 2 o'clock. And then the esteemed guests will be back at Old Trafford for the wake just after. So the academy players and staff making their way to the cathedral now, away from the Trinity statue, which has a wreath laid just in front of it. I think for proceedings at Old Trafford, that's it there for now. Some of the fans, as you can see, making their way away from the concourse as the academy players and staff just departing. See, I'm sure they would have learnt a thing or two about the magnificence of Sir Bobby and his achievements over the last few days and weeks. And as ever, they are taught so much about the history of this club coming through the ranks that they would know anyway.
Yes, certainly so. Should do.
So there you go, the procession departs Old Trafford and makes its way into Manchester city centre. But, you know, important to know that the turnout was very good and of all ages, Danny,
Yes.
as well, isn't it?
Yeah, without a shadow of a doubt. And respectfully, people took part respectfully and paid their respects, showed the value of the man.
Yes.
And it's testament to the person and what he's left behind, the legacy.
And to the club and the way it's been done. I
Yeah.
think,
Absolutely.
I think one thing United do well, and I remember saying this to Sully when we were in Munich, the club does remember its great players.
Yeah.
And obviously Bobby was one of the greatest, as we discussed earlier. But the way the club have put this together, their part in it, I think is very creditable indeed.
100%. Well, as we said, we are saying farewell to the legend Sir Bobby Charlton today, and this a reminder of what he achieved at the club and how much he'll be missed.
It takes a special kind of person to achieve so much. and remained so humble. Sir Bobby Charlton set standards for others to follow and targets that very few would ever get close to. Bobby joined Manchester United aged just 15. He slotted seamlessly into a supremely talented youth team, winning the FA Youth Cup 3 times in 1954, 55 and 56, as the Reds dominated the early years of the competition. His first team league debut came in October 1956, funnily enough against Charlton at Old Trafford. Bobby scored twice, and within a year he was a regular, bagging 10 league goals as United won the title. His development continued apace, and he was flourishing in a team that seemed destined for glory. But tragedy was just around the corner. The 6th of February 1958 was Manchester United's darkest day. Bobby and the squad were returning from Belgrade when their plane had to refuel in Munich. The aircraft crashed on its 3rd attempt at takeoff. Bobby survived and was pulled from the wreckage by goalkeeper Harry Gregg. Tragically though, 23 people died, including 8 of Bobby's teammates and dear friends. It was a lot to deal with at the tender age of 20. Bobby had become a senior figure at the club well ahead of his time. He played every game in memory of his fallen colleagues, and his versatility was vital as the side was reconstructed. The 1960s saw the birth of the legendary United Trinity, as Bobby, Dennis Law and George Best starred together for the Reds. The league title was secured in 1965, and Bobby was voted the Football Writers' Player of the Year and later the European Footballer of the Year, which is today known as the Ballon d'Or. Another championship followed in 1967 before his and the team's finest hour 12 months later in the European Cup final.
And at Wembley, later on that glorious day, the cup they wanted was the European Cup.
The Reds played in blue and became the first English side to lift the trophy by beating Benfica at Wembley. Every member of the team excelled to fire United to glory, but while it was very much a team effort, Bobby, as captain, rallied the troops and stepped up with a brace of goals to give the team the cutting edge.
Best Charlton in the middle, so too is Aston. Charlton, another! Well done, Bobby Charlton. Well done, Manchester United.
During 2 unforgettable decades at Old Trafford, he set club records for both appearances and goals, scoring 249 times in 758 games. To this day, only Ryan Giggs has played more games for United than Bobby, and only Wayne Rooney has hit more goals.
What a goal!
Bobby was also a star on the international stage for England. He pulled on the famous Three Lions shirt 106 times, scoring 49 goals, a record which stood until September 2015, when it was surpassed by Wayne Rooney, and was a mainstay during England's World Cup triumph in 1966. In June 1984, he became a director of Manchester United, and a decade later, Bobby became Sir Bobby, receiving a knighthood for his services to football, having previously been awarded the OBE and CBE. He was later awarded the Freedom of the City of Manchester. Sir Bobby's legacy lives on at Old Trafford in the shape of the United Trinity statue he shares with his legendary teammates Dennis Law and George Best, and the Sir Bobby Charlton stand, the stadium's South Stand, renamed in his honour in April 2016. A universally popular figure, Sir Bobby was a true embodiment of the values of Manchester United.
And the perfect finish from Bobby Charlton!
And while he was a genuine, real team player, he also possessed the ability to win matches all on his own. Sir Bobby was quite simply one of the finest of his generation, though it embarrassed him to be the subject of such lavish praise. But as uncomfortable as he would find these words, it must be said that few footballers, if any, were more gifted, and none were more loved.
So we crossed the pictures from the cathedral. This is just from slightly earlier with Sir Alex Ferguson and David Gill arriving. Just to let you know that the funeral in the cathedral itself will not be shown live. That's quite understandably on request of the Charlton family, which we were saying reflects Sir Bobby, really. He was such a humble man, somebody who wasn't bothered about all the fuss surrounding football and the extenuating circumstances outside of the game. He just wanted to play football, train, work hard, because he was such an honest, humble, down-to-earth guy, John.
Absolutely, very much so, and he had those values all his life.
Some more pictures now coming to you. We will speak to some of the people there at the cathedral very, very shortly. You see the vicar and his clergy readying themselves for the procession as well. So yeah, the funeral to take place in the cathedral very shortly. But let's now hear from one of his former teammates, Sir Bobby. It's our legendary goalkeeper, Alex Stepney.
Obviously, it's a sad day, but is it a day of celebration as well, though?
Celebration, obviously. I mean, what a great man, what a great member for Manchester United for all those years, and what he did for the club was incredible. You know, you can't say any more. It was just magnificent.
When you play with him, when you think of Bobby Charlton, is there one thing that comes to mind, one moment that comes to mind?
European Cup final. Because, I mean, Bobby always said, you know, we can score 4. We did score 4 and won it. And he scored 2 of them, 2 great goals.
How should he be remembered? As a player, or what he did after his career?
I think in football in general, for Manchester United was incredible. When you played for England, for your country, you know, you're playing with other players. But he loved Manchester United, and he completed his mission after Munich.
As a person as well, though, how would you describe him?
Great guy, just a great family man. He just enjoyed his life. He enjoyed playing crib and whatever we did on those days. No, you know, no mobile phones anymore. But just loved him to bits.
Modest guy. What would he make of all these people being here for him today?
No, he wouldn't want it. He wouldn't want it. But you know, his family, they'll love it. They'll love it because what he did for them as well.
Lovely to see you.
And you. Thanks.
All the best.
Stepney, the former Manchester United goalkeeper. He was a hell of a goalkeeper as well, wasn't he, John?
He was indeed, yeah, absolutely. I remember him coming here from Chelsea and, yes, made a big difference to us. Yeah. And a member of the team, obviously, they've just shown winning the Champions League.
You can see some of our first team arriving. Johnny Evans, Tom Heaton, Luke Shaw, Harry Maguire there as well. Of course, many more would have liked to have been there, Danny, but they've had to travel away with their respective countries as we head into this international break. But good to see them in attendance there.
Yeah, of course, and it's again, you know, what you notice, all dressed in the club suit with the club crest, and that's something that, you know, when you're a young player at the club, it's almost a real proud moment when you get that, because you look up above you and it's the manager wearing it, the director's wearing it, and I always remember Sir Bobby wearing it. Alongside the other directors, and you think, you know, you're all in uniform, you're all part of the same thing, and you know the players turning up there today wouldn't think twice and would definitely want to go and pay their respects to Sir Bobby.
100%. Royalty arriving as well. There is Prince William paying his respects, which is great to see, John.
Absolutely, very much so. That is a surprise, I must admit. I didn't know that would be he would be involved, but obviously he's got an official capacity with the FA, hasn't he, as well as obviously being a football fan himself.
Absolutely, you're right, because Sir Bobby wasn't just a hero to us here at United, but to England, of course.
Yes.
He served his country so well and is still one of very few Englishmen to lift a World Cup trophy. Of course, we hope that does change going forward, but he remains one of that small group of players to achieved it, Danny, winning the World Cup.
Yes, and again, played a huge part in that. As you say, we've not achieved it since, so it shows the magnitude of the characters, and you know, Bobby included, the players that were able to to win it for the country. And you know, you see Prince William there, obviously coming to pay his respects. And I think sometimes, because of the humility of Sir Bobby, it can be forgotten sometimes how far his reach was.
Yeah.
You know, how many people his life touched and his impact had. And you know, testament there, the fact that the Prince of the country is turning up.
Yeah, I still can't. 100%. I still can't believe in that World Cup final, he sacrificed his own game, didn't he, to help his country win just by man-marking Franz Beckenbauer.
Yeah.
100%. I mean, that's, again, the type of character Sir Bobby was. Sir Bobby definitely loved watching our next interviewee, because it's Captain Marvel, Brian Robson.
Brian, what's your main memory of Sir Bobby?
For me, it started straight away in the World Cup final, when he had some incredible games through that World Cup, but then to win the World Cup, and then the next time to actually see him play for Manchester United against Benfica, and the influence he had on that game. He was just a fantastic footballer, but I think everybody, they know that, they've seen it on a football pitch. But the thing about Sir Bob, off the pitch, he had time for everybody. So he was a great person as well.
Humble is the word that keeps coming up. Despite everything he's achieved, he stayed the same.
Yeah, always kept his feet on the ground, had time for everybody. You know, and I just look back at when he finished and he became director of United. All of a sudden, he brings these soccer schools together because he wanted to encourage kids to play football and love football. And then the charity work that he did as well. You know, he was a great person as well as a great player.
And he was a big support to the boss, particularly in those difficult sort of early seasons at United.
Yes, you know, I think Sir Bob, if you work for Manchester United, he's always going to be really supportive towards you. I can always remember when I came, you know, as a record signing, as soon as I signed the contract, the first person to come up to me and say, look, it's a great club, you know, enjoy your time at Manchester United.
Is this a day of celebration? It's a sad day, but it's also a day of celebration, do you think, of his life?
Yeah, I think you've always got to look at a celebration of his life. You know, it's sad for the family, but, you know, everybody's just got to support and celebrate what Sir Bobby Charlton achieved in his life.
Thanks for speaking to us, Robert. Cheers. Yes. Take care.
Yeah, Brian Robson there. Game recognises his game, doesn't it? Robbo, an absolute hero in these parts. He loved watching Sir Bobby play football and vice versa. Again, another England and Manchester United link there. Brian Robson, former captain of his country. Like we said, Sir Bobby's just as much a hero for his country as for Manchester United.
Very much so.
And the crowd is very, very large there outside the cathedral, of all ages, like we said, all due to pay their respects. The hearse on its way. Shortly, the procession will arrive at the cathedral before the coffin is taken into Manchester Cathedral for the service itself. Plenty of noticeable people in attendance. Gareth Southgate, the England manager, has arrived too to pay his respects.
Yes.
Again, just John showing how that connection between Sir Bobby and his country was so strong, is so strong. Gareth Southgate hoping to lead his country to glory at the Euros next summer. I'm sure Danny would have loved a player like Sir Bobby Charlton at his disposal.
I'm sure he would, and I'm sure he'd have pulled it all together. And you know, just looking at all the different people turning up, you got Alec and Anne Wiley, the kit man, the current kit man. Anne Wiley worked for so many years.
John Alexander, his wife too, Mick Phelan, Neil Ryan, Jim Ryan, all formerly of this club. Mick, of course, as player and coach. Neil Ryan, who managed the under-18s and influential in our academy setup, and Jim Ryan, formerly right-hand man of Sir Alex Ferguson.
Very much so, wasn't he? Yes.
Again, a player with a person with a huge history at Manchester United. So too Steve Bruce there with his son Alex and his wife. David Beckham's mum in there as well. The history of United is so rich, and so many important people in the club's history in attendance at the funeral today. This club has so much history, John, doesn't
Absolutely.
it? You've seen so much of it, been part of it as a long-standing fan. We hope it's a history which continues to bear success, of course. You've seen some of the most glorious years in our history, some history that those two men were part of, Nicky Butt and Roy Keane.
Nicky Butt, yes, very much so.
Again, they would have been brought up, Danny, on the history of Sir Bobby.
Exactly.
And the knowledge of his game and what it means to be at Manchester United.
Yeah, and you know, both carried it out to a T. You know, the fighting spirit, the pride in the shirt, you know, the never say die attitude. All, you know, both of those two carried it out immensely.
Well, that was the class of '92 philosophy, isn't it? Driven not only by Jimmy Murphy many years ago, but by Eric Harrison when they were coming through into their careers, and that embodied by Bobby Charlton as well, Sir Bobby, as we said earlier.
Yeah, well, the Busby Babes were brilliant in the first few years of the FA Youth Cup, weren't they? Dominating that competition. Then the class of '92 was probably the next biggest generation of players to come through. You probably fondly remember the Babes and the class of '92 equally, John.
Absolutely, but both great sides in their own way, in their own years, yes. But obviously the Busby Babes just monopolised the Youth Cup in its infancy and just won it every year. And then, as you say, the class of '92 took that on later on, and their careers have been very much akin to the Busby Babes and the way they've come through here and been successful both individually and collectively for Manchester United.
100%. Well, let's hear from another player who came to the Manchester United Academy now. Actually, it's the former Wales forward, Mark Hughes.
Mark, what are your personal memories of Sir Bob?
Sir Bobby was always a presence around the club, and you always knew he was there in the background. Never really pushed himself forward or passed an opinion of what was going on, good, bad or indifferent, but he always knew he was in the background, and he was there to support everybody connected with the club, and he was always great company, very humble man, but a man that had his heart in Manchester United.
Humble's a word that keeps coming up despite everything that he's achieved. Remained the same.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's the reality of his standing in the game. I mean, it's you'll see obviously the respect everyone's showing today, but that standing in the game, he never pushed that forward, never made anybody aware of that. Everybody knew, obviously, that he's such a great of the English game, but he was very much about the present and trying to support whoever was in charge or playing for United at that time.
You scored many a spectacular goal for United, but he could hit them as well, couldn't he?
Oh, yeah, I'm not nowhere near the level of Sir Bobby. Yeah, an outstanding player. I remember when I was about 18, 19, and I went to his soccer school, and he was still in kit. He was still dropping his left shoulder and going to the right and knocking them in the net. So that was a pleasure just to be part of that.
One of the best we've ever produced in this country, do you think?
Without a doubt.
Thanks very much, Mark. Cheers. All the best. Thank you. Cheers.
Mark Hughes, who, like Stuart said, definitely did have an knack for scoring spectacular goals. But Sir Bobby probably trumps him on that. He scored so many unbelievably spectacular goals. OK, the hearse is arriving at Manchester Cathedral. Just to remind you that the actual service itself will remain private on request of the family. Again, fans showing their appreciation applauding as the coffin rolls by, and as Stuart mentioned earlier, we are celebrating as well as feeling sad and emotional to say farewell to Sir Bobby, but to have the chance to say farewell and to remember the good times is hugely important. So the coffin enters Manchester Cathedral, where the funeral will take place. Just to remind you that the funeral itself is a private event, so no cameras allowed in there, and that's from the family's wishes, and understandably so. It's a hugely emotional time for them, and we hope that all of the Charlton family and extended family get through the day and are okay, but we will celebrate Sir Bobby's life with them afterwards as well, of course. Now, John, seeing the coffin depart into the cathedral there, it must be emotional for you as well, having... I can only imagine how your memory must be swirling with such fantastic joy, remembering what he was like as a player.
Absolutely. Well, I remember when he first appeared, and you wondered, who is this guy? You know, who is this Bobby Charlton that was going to be in the first team? And because, of course, they had a settled forward line of Berry, Whelan, Taylor, Violet and Pegg at that time, and then this youngster called Charlton appears, and of course soon made his mark with his 2 goals on his debut, and then obviously running through all this time at United, helped United to make history and obviously be the kind of individual which we've talked about this morning and will be celebrated but also remembered in the funeral service, I'm sure, by the eulogy and anybody else that speaks at the funeral. Yeah. But it was all, I thought, very dignified.
Yeah, absolutely. I just love the way when you're mentioning the forward line, there were 5 names in it back then. That says everything about the way football was. Like 5 forwards across the line, and,
yes.
and what magnificent names you mentioned there.
And they could all play, I can tell you.
100%. Well, let's get some more reaction from outside the cathedral now. This film just before the hearses arrived with Peter Schmeichel.
Peter, how do you remember Sir Bobby?
I remember him, you know, for so many great things, good things, great experiences. You know, first of all, I mean, very, very new to the football club. I took quite a large group, maybe 10, 12 people around Old Trafford. This is before the tours, you know, before the structured tour. I took them around Old Trafford, and I was very proud to be able to show my friends Old Trafford. And I came up to the Europa Lounge, and he was having lunch with also quite a big group of people there. And I'm like sort of very, you know, cautiously just waving. And he stood up, came up and introduced himself to every single one of my friends. And you know, I mean, I've met him because he would come into the dressing rooms before every game, of course. But I was so new at the club, so I've only kind of met him maybe 5 or 6 times. Or maybe a little bit more, but... And that just, and you know, some of those guys who in that group, you know, we've been talking about here in the last couple of weeks, you know, that just stands out as an incredible experience, because here you have a guy who's won the Ballon d'Or, you know, runners-up twice, won the World Cup, won the championship with Manchester United, won the European Cup. He survived the Munich disaster. Took maybe one of the most important parts in rebuilding the football club, giving people of Manchester hope, all of that. And this guy comes over and he's just, you know, so dignified, so humble, so nice. And yeah, fantastic. So I've got incredible memories.
And after games in the dressing room sometimes as well?
Always. Oh, and always supportive, you know. It was, you know, and you take lessons of that. So when you speak to players, current players, as former players, I always remember how he was, you know, always trying to be supportive, even in the worst of times, you know, always say, hey, well, as a club we do this, you know, he was always like that. So yeah, before games, after games.
Good to see you, Peter. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Cheers.
Yeah, Peter Schmeichel there. So many luminaries from the world of football there to pay their respects on a very significant day, as we say farewell to the great Sir Bobby Charlton. And John, just before we finish, and of course, as we said earlier, the funeral itself inside the cathedral is private, so no cameras in there. But just to summarise, John, as we say farewell to Sir Bobby, what did he mean to you, and what does he mean to the millions of Manchester United fans who adored him?
Well, he typified the Busby Babes. He survived the Munich air crash, and I said earlier, in my opinion, he was the catalyst, alongside Jimmy Murphy as well as Sir Matt, in building this club up again to win the European Cup 10 years later. And of course, we're going on and winning well, it wasn't called the Premiership then, but the First Division title, surrounded by other great players, but Charlton was the catalyst for it all, in my opinion.
And loved the club so much.
Absolutely.
Continued to work as ambassador, as a director.
It was his life.
Yeah.
Sorry, it was his total life, and that's what he enjoyed, what he really wanted to do, enjoyed doing. He wanted to be a footballer, and as you said, or I think you said, he christened this place the Theatre of Dreams, and he was part of those dreams, and he made many people's dream come true, but the way he played.
And continued to teach the Manchester United youth players coming through that academy about the ideals, about the philosophies of this great football club.
Absolutely, absolutely. He embodied it all, and as we've shown today, or on the TV has shown, so many people wanted to pay their respects to that humble man and the way he had been.
And we've seen that today, Danny, with the amount of people that turned out.
We have, and it's testament to the man, testament to the work he's done, that he probably didn't see as work. He just saw it as being a good person, you know, passing on his knowledge and his education down to the next generation and trying to help the next generation have standards, and he's done that for generations to come.
Yeah, so we say farewell to the great Sir Bobby Charlton today. Yes, a very, very sad day, particularly for the Charlton family and extended family, but also one in which we celebrate a man who played 758 times for this football club, scoring 249 goals. An incredible career. This, the final time that Sir Bobby passes the Trinity. These shots from earlier as the hearse made its way down Sir Matt Busby Way, past the Trinity. We will forever remember the great Sir Bobby.